Look, welcome to our webinar on embracing future trends in the insurance sector. My name is Dan Cooke. I'm Managing Director of Procensol Australia, and I'm lucky enough to be joined with me by two experts in the industry. We've got Gavin Charlton with us, and Gavin is Managing Director of Truform Consulting. Welcome along, Gavin. If you give us a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Thanks, Dan, and welcome everyone. I've been working in the insurance industry for 20 plus years now. Last 6 years, Managing Director of Truform Consulting. We've specialised in insurance technology, helping insurers with process improvement within the Australian market. So thanks, Dan.
Perfect. And I'm also joined by Jake Sloan, who is Global Industry Manager for Insurance at Appian. So thanks for joining us, Jake. If you'd like to give us an introduction as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Dan. Yes, Jake Sloan, first half of my career in technology, the second half within insurance, and the commonality is using technology to scale the experience. And those halves I now find are measured in decades. So I guess I'm not getting any younger. And now work for and lead Appian's insurance practice. Appian is a low-code automation platform. It helps insurers build applications and workflows rapidly. Was previously CIO of a specialty flood insurance unit where I met Appian, and I've been now part of the team for about 4 years.
Oh, fantastic. Well, welcome along. It's great to have you here. And finally, to keep us from going too far off piste, we've got our chat master, Pete Ames, who will be taking us through some of the housekeeping.
Yes, thank you very much, Dan, and welcome everybody. So a little bit of the housekeeping. So number one, we are recording the webinar and we will be making that recording available after the fact. So if you do want to share it with anybody, or there are some really interesting points that come out, don't worry if you don't quite make it. We'll be sharing the notes and the actual recording in a few days' time. The second and more important thing is that we are going to be using, this is an interactive webinar. It's your chance to pick the brains of Gavin and Jake and Dan on the subject at hand. And we are going to be using the chat. So there's no Q&A function. We're using the chat function. I'm pretty sure everyone knows where it is. Little squiggle of the mouse, it should appear at the bottom. And we're using the chat because it defaults to only visible to myself and the other panelists. This means you can ask any question you wish, confident that no one else can see it. So we can be very open in the questions we ask, and then I will pass it on to the panel on your behalf. So just to make sure we have all found the chat, can I just ask a quick question? Simple yes or no. Has the pace of change in the insurance market accelerated in the last 2 years, in your opinion? If you could all just pop a quick answer to that one in the chat, means I know you found it and that you're good to go for the Q&A. And whilst you're in there, actually, if you do say yes, I'd be really interested to know what you think's driving it as well. So if you could add that in, that'd be wonderful. And with that said, I'm going to hand back to Dan.
Okay, so during the webinar, we're going to cover off a few topics today. So we're going to be looking at connected insurance and how it impacts the bottom line. We're then going to move on and we're going to look at what's preventing us from connecting stakeholders across the claim. And how you can overcome that. And an important one is how you actually get started with some of these initiatives without spinning up another $20 million project. You know, we've seen quite a lot of this where, you know, we're looking at whole system replacements, etc. That's not what we're saying here. And there are other ways to become more innovative quicker. So anything we have from the responses, Pete?
Yes, an overwhelming yes, that it has got faster, which I think just makes everybody feel better that they're not alone in that view. And somebody has, I think, coined it very nicely. The driving force has been the need to keep competitive with customer expectations on service and delivery, which I think leads us quite nicely into the next section, Dan.
Yeah, so look, let's get straight into it. So connected insurance, why has it exploded? And why is it the buzzword at the moment? Jake, do you want to give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. You know, so connected insurance, you know, different ways to define it, of course, but it's about the experience. You know, when you think about digitizing how your customers engage with you, whether it helps you drive, you know, higher revenues, lower costs, improve conversion ratios, if you're talking about the sales side of it, And what we see is that as insurers are looking for opportunities to innovate, and some of the comments there as far as remaining competitive and the customer expectations, connected insurance really promises that you're going to be able to have these unique solutions that are able to digitize the customer's buying journeys, anything from the claims initiation. You think about how COVID really drove us to shelter in place. And with all due respect to the pandemic, of course, and the gravity of it, it's really accelerated the digital expectation of the consumers. And it really helps, from an automation perspective, to automate workflows, underwriting, claims handling and such. So yeah, it's quite an interesting time.
Yeah, it's an interesting time indeed. So Gavin, why is it so important at the moment?
Oh, look, I think, Jake, you nailed it there. With the pandemic, there's been a solid uptake of digital usage. I guess offsetting that is insurers need to be nimble and react to that. So one of the things is one of the issues is within Australia, you've got a lot of regulation and compliance issues to deal with as a carrier. So 7 states, 2 territories. At any given point, there's always a degree of change on the technology slate. So, if you're a business product owner within the business and you approach your technology department, their slate is always full. And that's due to the nature of the systems of records that are in place. So, although it's really exciting that the digital channels have been accelerated, the insurance industry needs solutions quicker, faster to market, low code applications that can be spun up and respond to both the short and long tail demands of the customers at the moment. I see the industry moving towards a very personalized experience, especially the younger generation. They want a tailored solution every time they go online. So they don't want to be pushed to a call center or to another department or another process. So the ability to make all this seamless, transact online, is definitely the opportunity that I see in the next 2 years, and how we respond to that in a customer-centric perspective is going to be really important. Eliminating those pain points along the customer journeys is key as well. So those are some of the exciting things I see happening.
Yeah, well, what do you see going on in the kind of car insurance space around this sort of?
Yeah, so telematics is not new. It's a concept that was born 10 years ago. But what I have seen is the uptake of both the hardware device and the applications on the phone. So the two working together now gives full coverage. So this gives the insurer the opportunity to really price accordingly. So traditionally, the rating engines and pricing engines will work on an annual cycle, 6 months at best. It's not too dynamic. But with usage-based insurance, and especially during COVID, people aren't driving, so the claims frequency has actually gone down, but yet insurance premiums have gone up. So I think the nimble new players coming into market are realizing this, and they're spinning up dynamic pricing models to support usage-based insurance. So classic example is around dynamic renewals. So we've all been there. You get your annual renewal license, your fee, and it's gone up to 5 to 10%. Well, that shouldn't be the case, especially in the pandemic. So I think where market share is being lost from the bigger insurers that are dealing with these clumsy systems is that the dynamic players are emerging and they're stealing market share.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and it may be one that Jake can come in on. Where you've got these kind of digital first insurers and digital first players who are coming in who don't necessarily have the legacy. They don't have some of the large core systems necessarily that the more traditional insurers have.
Mm-hmm.
What can those traditional insurers do, Jake?
Yeah, well, if you think about how the competition really is rising with no legacy debt, you talk about those digital insurers, the velocity of change is only increasing and getting faster. And you think about how the APIs, we've done proofs of concepts with Mercedes-Benz, for instance, where you can initiate a claim based on crash criteria, straight through process that all the way through to payment based on the insurer's risk appetite. So when you think about all these, inflows of cash being readily available in the market for investment, you're just seeing this rise of the digital insurer and a very competitive, landscape out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we sort of seen it in the motor space. Gavin, what are your thoughts in terms of, we're seeing more smart devices in homes. We're a lot of us are wearing sort of smartwatches and medical devices. Do we see this trend presumably continuing into the sort of home insurance and medical insurance space?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Internet of Things, connecting everything up, as you see the technology emerging in the homes, it's becoming standard practice now to have cameras in the house, etc., fridges that can connect to the internet, all these things. The IOT is a technology that is, in my opinion, it's under embraced at this stage, and I think it will take off because you will have an opportunity similar to the way vehicles are monitored. You can monitor the home. Now that might be trees too close to the gutters, whatever the scenario is, but we now have visibility to underwrite against that home. So it's exciting. Also along the theme of connectedness, I think there's a huge opportunity in the long tail classes of insurance. So it's one thing focusing on short tail, but in the personal injury space, there is really an opportunity to connect all the players in a claim scenario. So you've got lawyers, you've got claimants, you've got health professionals. In the past, they've been disjointed and not communicating effectively. So the opportunity to bring everyone onto single platforms and single processes and connected processes both creates transparency, it reduces litigation rates, and increases, the NPS or the claimant satisfaction scores for insurers. So that's very exciting, and I see that emerging. So some regulators have embraced this, and they're opening up channels for direct claimants as well. So another one to watch is how we connect personal injury together.
Yeah. And I think, with some of the longer tail classes, arguably that personal touch is one of the most important things. There's a lot of bespoke work that needs to be done. There's a lot of every person is slightly different. Their treatments are going to be different. Their needs are going to be different, and the severity of their injuries is often different and very varied. When you're dealing with motor accident, it can be fairly straightforward, but when you're dealing with people, it's anything but. So it does feel like the long tail classes have been overlooked for a bit too long.
Yeah,
I heard a great phrase actually recently around the subject: augment instead of automate. Which I think that go back several years, there was kind of a push for the automation side of things, try and get the people out of the way. And it feels like it's swung back to actually now empower the people who can make these.
Couldn't agree more. It's you can't take the people out of the process. Otherwise you lose that human touch.
Yeah.
But it's about making it more effective, isn't it?
That's right. But it's that enterprise orchestration capability, right? When you think about all the silos and all the complexities and being able to work through that, especially when we're talking about a human centric process at the root of a human-based insurance product, for injury. That long tail is just getting more complex, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're sort of seeing this in Australia where personal injury is involved, and actually, there's more of a kind of human element, and people are going out, they're going into people's homes, and they're making it as easy as they can, but to be able to take the entire platform with all the information with them in their pocket on mobile devices, and take all that there is allowing them to make decisions and get decisions made a lot quicker. And that's something I think we're going to be coming on to a little bit later in the webinar around, sort of connecting the stakeholders together. So that'll be really interesting to touch on. So in summary, we're looking about personalized experience, especially, as you say, Gavin, for the younger generation that's used to transacting online, that's used to dealing with systems, that's demanding a better experience. And we're seeing that, I think, from other industries as well, that cross-pollinate. Some of the finance space and other other industries are sort of setting the bar fairly high in terms of their customer experience. And then that's having an effect on industries like insurance, where it's becoming a lot more in demand. So we're using this to reduce costs, drive conversion rates, get a more tailored experience for the customer, and really give them that sort of digital digital first experience that some of the younger insurers can bring to the market straight away. But it's important to do that while respecting the existing landscape. And then that's really, where we're going to touch on later with how do you actually get started with this? How do we achieve that result with satisfied customers that have a great experience when you've got that legacy of large siloed systems that were never designed for the new world, where everyone's transacting on their phones while they're walking along the street buying insurance products or putting claims in, and cars are automatically notifying insurers and other emergency services if they're involved in an accident. So it'd be really interesting to get your thoughts on that. Now it's time to bring us into our first poll. So we want to put a poll out to say, which of these do you recognize as being challenges in the industry? Obviously, it's not all about technology. It's not all about process as a whole myriad of different challenges that are going on at the moment, from external influences to the technology, to your competitors. So it would be great if everyone could vote in the poll, and we'll get the results in a minute.
Yeah. While everyone's doing that, we've already had a question in the chat, which we're going to come to Q&A after this sort of next section. There's another topic we just want to touch on first. But what I would say is, please, if you have a question cross your mind, drop it in the chat as it occurs. There's going to be covered quite a lot, and I know that people tell me that they had questions and they couldn't remember what they were. And so drop them in the chat as they come. If the guys answer them, meanwhile, I won't ask it. But when we come to the Q&A, I'll be sure you get your answer. And we just, I think most people have voted now. All people are ruminating on it, but there's a clear winner out in front. Price pressures comes from behind suddenly. Right. Well, I think a minute and a half is enough time for everyone to vote. So I'm just going to end the poll there. And I'm going to share the results. So, gents, anything there that catches your eye?
Sorry, go on, Joe.
Pretty much what we've been saying, disjointed legacy processes, nothing new. There's always going to be price pressures, the regulatory overhead, transparency. So, yeah. Interestingly, market competition is low. I would have expected that to be a bit higher. I think there is a lot of competition in the market at the moment, especially with the digital insurer and the emergence of it. So I'd probably challenge that a bit, but otherwise everything is pretty standard. What I'd expect.
Yeah, the siloed systems, of course, comes up quite frequently, and when those disparate systems, that of course influences the disjointed legacy processes and the ability to really go in and innovate, and can be quite frustrating, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the two really go hand in hand, don't they? And it's not unique to the insurance industry either. We see this across a number of different industries where you have these silo systems that lead to disjointed legacy processes and leads to a poor customer experience.
Yeah, it is encouraging to see transparency score as well as it did to be to provide that. So that's good.
Okay, it's interesting, isn't it, really, that disjointed legacy process is kind of the symptom of the siloed systems.
Yeah.
So I think if you combine those two, you've probably got everybody pretty much voting for the same issue. Yeah, which is good, which is why we're all here today.
Indeed. It's certainly a key piece to it all. And like I said, something we see quite often. Thanks for taking part in the poll. Very interesting. I'd like to sort of move the conversation on now to connecting stakeholders across the claim. So, I mean, as the poll suggested there as well, a lot of the problems we see are around disjointed processes. Whether it's the claim experience, the purchasing experience, etc. What does it look like if it's fixed, Gavin?
Yeah, so I think it ties into this question that we've just received here as well around, who hosts the platform. But how does it get fixed? Essentially, we want to connect all parties that are involved in the claim. onto a process backbone or a claim backbone. So that platform is typically stood up. We've developed one ourselves, and that is linked into the insurer and down to a system of record. But also we can open that platform up to legal providers, rehab providers, direct claimant interaction, and the insurer itself. So typically, if an accident happens, a claimant will lodge a claim with the insurer. The response might be immediate, but typically it's a 6 to 10 day period of compliance, making sure that the claim is legitimate. These processes, and then it kicks off into all different processes, which will take time. So there's correspondence between legals, there's correspondence between doctors, allied health professionals. You missed a photo of the scene of the accident, all doctors' reports, police reports. Over time, this will all be connected onto a single platform. So those processes that typically take weeks will be reduced down to days. Now, how does this translate out into a better outcome? Obviously, your litigation rates are going to be reduced if there is transparency. So as a claimant, I go into the portal, I lodge my claim, I see exactly where I'm at in the cycle. Now, you go back 10 years ago, you go into the ether a bit. Yes, there'll be correspondence back and forth, but you don't really know exactly where you're at in the cycle. So I think this is closely linked to transparency, opening up the channels of communication, but also real-time provision of information and results. So that allows the insurer to make decisions, compliance decisions, initiate rehabilitation for personal injury, or like Jake said earlier on around the short tail classes, straight through processing the claim. If it's the windscreen of a car, just pay it. It's within delegations, etc. So connecting all the parties to a claim is definitely the way of the future. There is some really good green shoots emerging in the industry. The legal profession is starting to talk this way. Some regulators are being proactive. They've actually started some trials on this. And I think, this is where our technology will complement this over time in the next 2 years, connecting everyone up.
What's it looking like in the US, Jake? I mean, how do you see this over in the US?
Very similar, actually. When you talk about, how insurers are really able to modernize, trying to do it incrementally, without a large rip and replace type, approach. I mean, certainly modernization of the core is also important, but when you think about, using Gavin's word connected, when you think about being able to connect all those different personas and actors and this, enterprise orchestration capability, for instance, Appian's connected claims, that's exactly where the name was derived from, because it connects all those different, parties involved. And what we're seeing in the States is really, that goal of increasing experience while reducing leakage. And being able to do that very quickly. Speed is very differentiating as it relates to being able to improve.
So effectively, by wrapping the core system with that kind of orchestration layer, bringing people, process, technology into a layer that wraps your core systems, you're kind of unlocking that ability to innovate quicker.
That's right. That's exactly
to improve the experience.
Yeah, code wrap, it creates the flexibility you need. It's really the answer to the challenge, and it really eases your path to future upgrades on your core as well, all the while reducing debt. All too often we see the enhance and change, paths against the traditional core are choked off with, regulatory initiatives, or, cyber is so top of mind, of course. And so by being able to do the code wrap and create that flexibility, it gives organizations the ability to be able to drive that change. And again, you use that word speed. The speed is so important when we're talking about weeks versus these larger initiatives that are years, and you just don't have years. So
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think gone are the days of multi-year projects, and
that's right.
The industry has to innovate so quickly these days, and being able to respond to customer feedback and improve the way the systems are operating or the processes operating. It may have used to take sort of years or months. Now it's weeks and days, and even hours in some cases. And I think coming back to some of the earlier points where we've got these kind of digital first insurers sort of chomping at the heels of some of the more traditional players, they're able to do that quickly.
That's right.
And efficiently, and so it's going to become key for competition in the long run.
Absolutely.
What I find interesting is the industry's still got a lot of work to do in this space. I mean, I've had a very mundane example, but we over in Australia, my roof got destroyed by you would call it 5.5-inch hail, or 14 centimeters for those in Europe, or so. And my insurer, they actually were reselling a policy from another insurer, and then that insurer passed it to a managing company to manage the claim, and then that managing company passed it to a contract managing company to manage all the individual contractors. And then I had contractors turning up, and they were quite often subcontracting that work on. So I'm about 8 levels deep, and I'm getting calls from my insurance company asking me what's going on and where things are up to. And it's kind of, I find, I mean, everyone was, incredibly pleasant, and it's taken 11 months to get the job done. But we got there in the end. But from a customer experience point of view, I need to, I expect to turn to my insurer and say, you tell me what's coming up.
Right.
You tell me where we're up to in the process, what work's been done, what work's been delayed, who's going to be on site when. I shouldn't be having to tell you. So it's quite clear there's quite a bit of work to do in that space left.
Absolutely.
And that's
it's interesting that insurance is, as an industry, those that work in it also get to experience it.
Yeah.
Which most industries don't get that. It brings it to life. There's all of this work for customer experience and staying in touch, but actually most of us at some point make those claims and have that experience, Dan. And just wanted to pop in, because I know we're coming to Q&A in a second, so just one final prompt. If you have questions, we've had a few come in already. Please do pop them in chat. Or if you've got another hideous insurance experience like Dan, please feel free to share. Safe space. We can get it all out. But sorry, I think, Gavin, you were about to say something.
Yeah, to your point, Dan, I think that's an experience on a physical asset. Like us, I know it's confronting, but can you imagine that in a personal injury experience?
Yeah.
So, you're trying to get your mental health back together. You're trying to get physically recovered and get back to work as quickly as possible. So when you're dealing with disjointed processes there and what I call just handoff points, right? It's from one person to the next, you get frustrated. Yeah. And this is why the personal injury schemes are so litigated, because people just can't deal directly with the insurer. They'll rather just get the lawyer to do it. So I think it's incumbent on the insurers to invest and improve their technologies in the space, make it transparent, sort the processes out. And I think that the dividend will be litigation rates dropping over time. So
absolutely,
it's a strategic
keep at the speed and how that influences that. I mean, it's key. I'm personally living a warranty claim right now on a refrigerator, and again, not hail, and it's certainly not as important as personal injury. But what's challenging as being part of the industry is that I see where the connection pieces are. Where the warranty holder is not connecting it with the service provider. And it seems simple outwardly, yet if you look at all the millions I'm sure they've invested to solve this. So I'm first to chat in and provide some perspectives as a insurance colleague from a consumer perspective. So
yeah, it's exactly that. So sometimes you scratch your head and sort of wonder why this appears to be so hard for so many people to do when in actual fact it's not necessarily as hard as it is made out to be. I mean, I think your point, Gav, on the personal injury is very true. And I think there are some green shoots in that space. We're starting to see some, even in the regulatory space, some of the systems there are starting to allow people to request treatments from their insurer dynamically, have those treatments automatically approved, and being able to interact digitally. So you're coming towards the end of a cycle of some sort of rehab, say physio, and you need some more. I just want to make that request. I want to touch a button I want to make that request to my insurer, and I want to get a response back within minutes, not sit for days waiting for a letter to come through the post or an email to arrive after someone's sat on it for days on end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there is progress being made, but there needs to be more, and people need to be innovating quicker than they are at the moment.
We've had a few questions in, chaps, if now's a good time, because
yeah,
so I thought I'd just sort of segue us across. So, I mean, first let's take the question that came in sort of at the start, because it touches on what we're doing, and everybody's seen it as well, so I can ask you. Somebody mentioned that, David mentioned that seeing this all parties connected on one platform, what do we see going forwards? Do we see the industry building its own version? Everybody in the industry building their own versions, or do we see a coalescence around maybe one or two standardized providers of that kind of system? Over to you, Dan.
From my perspective, there's always that balance. I mean, you tend to get a few traditional players in the insurance industry anyway, for some of the more core siloed systems. To a certain extent, it depends on the nature of the system that's being implemented. I mean, I think there is a likelihood that people will gravitate to platforms, but those platforms have got to be flexible. At the end of the day, one of your differentiators is the way you run your business, and therefore your processes. And if everybody migrates towards a standard platform that forces you to do things their way, then you're going to start to lose some of those differentiators, and it's a lot harder to innovate. So it depends on the platform. Is my take. If you're going down a sort of a low-code platform that's flexible and allows you to innovate quickly, then that's certainly an option. But I think in one of the areas we're going to touch on later, it certainly doesn't have to mean a core system replacement. I think over time we'll migrate more towards flexible platforms that are cloud native and therefore secure, where a lot of the overhead and a lot of the costs are sort of taken care of as part of the platform. But yeah, I think that in that interim step, coming back to some of the points raised by the gents earlier, wrapping the existing platforms with technology that allows a similar kind of result is going to be a good way forward. But I'd be keen to hear the views of others.
Yeah, I think the platform aspect is being able to drive that differentiated value. Each insurer's value prop is of course unique, and being able to differentiate that. I will say, kind of on the coalescence theme, we are seeing with blockchain, for instance, here in the States, we're seeing two of the tier ones have now taken that differentiated platform, but they've come together to be able to process claims where they're the primary policyholders faster, as well as from the fraud. So I do think that there'll be additional innovation in that space, but I clearly think that the different platform approach and allowing each insurer to have that differentiation will be critical, as well as varying levels of debt. So if you're newer, and we're seeing that, as well as lots of acquisitions, we're seeing that there are some complexities there that wouldn't be solved with a one size fits all, of course.
And I think there are certain touch points in the industry where it makes sense for there to be a lot more collaboration. And Gav, you can probably enlighten me more, but my understanding at the moment is certainly with certain parts of the industry, people literally come together in rooms to discuss claims and how they should be exchanged and various things like that. So it's sort of the older days of talking through sort of caseloads and all that kind of stuff. That needs to change and be a lot more automated. So from that perspective, yeah, it's sort of working together and collaborating more is a sensible approach.
Gavin, do you have anything to throw in on top of this as well?
No, I think we're all on the same page there. I think it's going to be bespoke solutions per carrier, per insurer, to especially in Australia, to set up common platforms. I guess, given the compliance and the regulatory overhead, I think that's going to be a challenge. And also, every insurer will want to interact with their providers, their claimants, legals, in their own way, and that's their point of differentiation. But I think the key point is just having those people connected digitally is going to be the enabler. So I'm just looking at some of the questions that have come in. I think Angus raises a really good point. There's over-representation of the legal profession within personal injury. We all know that. We see it on the back of the buses. We see it on every signpost that we drive past. So what I'm saying is I think there's a direct correlation to if we improve the transparency and the way to lodge claims for claimants, they're typically not going to, or there'll be a lesser amount actually going to see a lawyer because, visit it yourself, you go online, you lodge your claim, you get a real-time response, you know exactly where you're at in the process. Some of your rehab provided treatments are being pre-approved, all seamless. So that over time should negate the need to go pick up a phone. Look, I'm not getting anywhere with my insurer. I don't know what the process is. I was handballed to 2-3 different departments. So that's the intention, over time, is to drop the litigation rates that way. So hopefully, Angus, that answers your question partly.
I think it does, Gavin. I think it does. We have had another question coming in, which I think is interesting as well. Somebody asked when you were sort of talking at the very start about Internet of Things and this data. Somebody's kind of asked, with the explosion of data and data analytics, basically they're saying is not quite in a good place either. Does it make more sense to get your data house in order before you start mucking around, I'm paraphrasing, with the operations? So make sure that your data is nice and clean so you can tell the impact on what you're doing. Or should you kind of crack on and improve the experience and sort the data out as you go or alongside? What's best practice? Jake?
Yeah, good question. I mean, from where we sit, we also sometimes see that the IoT, there's a lot of hype there, frankly. There's a lot of regulation when you're talking wearables. So I'd be inclined to say, get your data in order, data lake strategies and whatnot. Oftentimes that interestingly comes back to the lack of the ability to sit across and unify that data. But I will say, for instance, in the ag-re space, we're seeing a significant, true innovation in the IoT aspect. You think about how it can measure soil moisture and fertilizer applications and really help automate the claims straight through process aspect and via reporting. I'd be more inclined to say go IoT and then figure out your lake, because you can do that straight through process. You can really cut down the speed. You can really collaborate more closely with the farming community if that's your focus area, which we've seen several of our clients there in the area. So
yeah, it's true. So you can't backfill data, can you? You can't start capturing it 2 years ago.
That's right. You can buy it from a third party. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Gavin, we've also had a question which I think is best directed to you. You mentioned that there were several trials going on with the regulators. Someone's just asked, what's the sort of skinny on that? What's the direction that they're going in when it comes to these sorts of things?
So a couple of trials with regulators. I don't know if I can mention them, but one in Queensland, one in down south. So the one in Queensland is opening up online claims. So the ability for claimants to go directly to the regulator and lodge a claim. And then there is also a trial with the legal profession in there as well. So it's on a small cohort of trials within the Queensland scheme. So that's being trialled at the moment. Similar experience down in Return to Work SA.
Okay, I think hopefully that's answered the question for the person that asked it. Let me know in the chat.
This is big change for the traditional, for the legal profession. So I think the approach is take it slowly, get the buy-in and go from there.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm conscious of time. I want to keep everybody on track. I think maybe on that point, slowly get started. That's a very nice segue across, Dan, to the next subject.
Yeah, indeed.
And thank you to everybody who's asked questions as well. Really appreciate it.
Really appreciate
Please do keep them coming.
So look, we talked about some of the approaches. We talked about some of the problems. I think now's a good time to touch on how do we actually get started with this? How do we get started with improving our customer NPSs, becoming more innovative, and utilizing our siloed systems to the best of their abilities, but extending them out. So Gavin, where do we start to make it work?
So the approach that we've taken is we look right across the insurance value chain. So we've produced a heat map looking at from inception of a policy right through to finalisation and back office functionality. And we've broken it up into high, medium and low returns. So we typically go after the high returns, quick implementation, fixed process, automate things, connect people up, connect processes up. So that could be anything from a payments processing in your claims back office, or it could be dynamic renewals in an underwriting context. So you literally just have to quickly analyze your business, look at the returns, pick something and start. These cycles aren't big, long cycles of development. You're going from 2 to 6, 8 weeks max, and you should get results. So the ability, and it's a term being used for many years now, fail fast. You're not going to fail every time. You're going to get some wins, and you're actually going to change things and improve things. So at a very low cost base relative to changing your traditional systems of record. So coming back to Jake's point, the technologies used are wrappers, right? So you're complementing your systems that are in place. You're simply grabbing something that's a pain point in your organization. You're creating a window to it. You're writing back to your system of record. So that means your compliance overhead is fine. You're not going to break anything. Your systems of record talk to your general ledgers, your reporting, everything's in place. But to move that along and to change that is high risk and high cost and timely, versus creating a window into that system of record and surfacing up process in a connected fashion is the way to go. But analyze your value chain first and see where the quick wins are.
Yeah, and I think Jake, from our experience, and I'm sure yours, it's all about the agility.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the agility, the ability to quickly get that return. And instead of years, we're really talking weeks here. The average application for insurance is about 8 weeks long. Of course, some run longer, some run shorter. But the bottom line is that the speed is critical, and low code delivers. And we have a saying within Appian, idea to application in 8 weeks. And I'll speak with customers that are I can't get requirements together in 8 weeks. And it is just a profoundly different way to develop and deliver software with low code. We're talking about global reinsurance claims. We're talking about we've been blessed to have 3 of our customers over the last 3 years be Celent Model Insurer Award winners for ecosystem transformation. Anybody that's attending, if you'd like to get a copy of those reports, be glad to provide them to you. Aegon, Aviva, CNA Insurance. So it's just about getting started and quickly providing that result. Yeah, and
you touch on a really interesting point there about sort of preparing the business for the speed of change. Especially in an industry where IT programs can take years and often fail to deliver on the promises. Taking the low code approach with the agile sort of abilities and going after that low hanging fruit. You touched on it there with I can't even get my requirements done in 8 weeks. So how do you prepare the business for the speed of change?
Yeah, I think you got to really break them out of the culture that's become. I generally speaking, I believe that IT wants to be part of that. I hear there's the good versus evil, IT versus business. You decide which is which, but it really comes back to the governance of it. It comes back to like breaking those cultural norms. I mean, the software has a big part to do with it, of course, but really being able to just take your existing structure. The regulatory aspect, as Gavin was touching on, the visual designer within the low code platform lends itself to creating documentation as you go. So really, having that governance in place is key, so that you don't get off the wrong foot. You can go fast. You can also fail fast, frankly, and that's where I'm sure you and your team would be glad to provide some additional guidance on governance and getting it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and look, one thing we love about the platform, in Appian as well, is it really serves both sides of the coin, in the sense of when you show it to IT departments, they go, okay, I get that. That's cool. It's well set up. I understand, the infrastructure, I understand how it hangs together, I understand, and with the tools that we've got in, in that platform around DevOps and security and everything else, it ticks all the IT boxes very quickly. So they become comfortable with that platform very quickly. But then on the business side of it, you're delivering innovation and change quickly in a language that they understand, with visual process models and drag and drop designers. So the business also love it. And for us, it really spans both disciplines and both areas of an organization.
It does. One quick business comment that you made. We have one of our customers that attributes a soft retention result to their colleagues, because all the systems are unified into that single wrap, and contrast that to other divisions within this client's large organization. They're finding that colleagues want to stay within their team because of having that. So there's other kind of benefits that go along with it.
Yeah, absolutely, and we see a number of use cases for this. It really makes the complex simple. It's giving customers and internal users that sort of single view, that single pane of glass on their organization, bringing together data from disparate sources and siloed systems quickly and transparently. And really you're kind of obfuscating a lot of complexity potentially in there with flexible low code and the ability to deliver quickly. Gavin, you want to add anything else on that around the business and change management or anything?
I've just been sitting here thinking about that data question. So I don't think I've worked in any organization in the last 10 years where there isn't a data warehouse project on the go. Everyone's chasing that nirvana state of having a single platform with data, and it comes at a cost. So there's these multi-million-dollar programs of work underway in the data warehouse space. Call it a lake, whatever you want to call it. So I tend to look at analytics through the lens of the Gartner model. So you've got descriptive and diagnostic intelligence, and you've got predictive and prescriptive. The organizations are set to do the descriptive and diagnostic. We know how many policies we've got enforced. We know how many claims and we have to report out to a regulator. So I think the gap is using the technologies like this low code wrapper, process automation, and then process insights can be done to do prescriptive and predictive things. So typically what we do is we wait for the report to come out of the warehouse, and then we'll send it along to the team leader, and the team leader will bring their staff together and go, you know what, Mary, you did well this week. You answered 15 calls. Paul, you didn't do so well. You answered 8. It's very reactive. So the opportunity is to use the windows that we create into the process to actually drive prescriptive action. So don't wait for the report to come out. Surface it in a window to the person that's on the call or frontline staff actually interacting with the customer, and make a decision then, or offer them something ahead of them asking it. So this whole personalized experience world that we're moving towards is going to be around next best offer. So not waiting for your renewal to come every year and then get the shock going, oh, it's gone up $300. Get proactive as an insurance carrier and actually use your data, your insights to drive a premium reduction based on that person's usage. So all of that coming together typically gets halted by the data warehouse project that's running, right? Because the data warehouse project's running over there, then you've got all your reg change. And if we change the regulation, then it's going to break the warehouse. So that I've seen it in most organizations that I've worked in the last 10 years. So we've got to break that cycle. We've got to take prescriptive and predictive action, get ballsy with it. We've got the technologies out there. Let the warehouse project run, but actually do stuff in the business. So I think that's the exciting bit around the data. So sorry, I had to come back on that one.
No, it's an interesting point. I mean, I think the rise of artificial intelligence is going to play a part in that as well. But if you're not capturing the data, you don't have the data set to analyze. So it's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't stop or postpone capturing data because your warehouse isn't ready. But equally, if your warehouse and your strategy isn't in place for that, you're not going to get the most out of that data. And we're seeing sort of, my opinion is kind of, artificial intelligence is quite hyped, but when used properly and used constructively, it can give you some genuine insights when given large data sets, and that ability to sort through millions, if not billions, of data points rapidly to pull out new insights into your business is I think that's going to be fairly transformational in that data space.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Dan, we are getting near to time. I'm conscious of time. So just to let everybody know, if anybody does need to shoot off, we've had some questions come in. We are going to be doing, we have Jake and Gavin have agreed to hang on for up to 15 minutes after the webinar officially ends to make sure we cover off all the Q&A. So if you haven't got them in, or you've got to ask me a question, but you've got to shoot, please let me know as soon as you can. Dan, do you want to just summarize for us?
But before I get into a bit of a summary, this is the first of many webinars, and we'd love some feedback from you on some of the topics that you'd like us to cover off in upcoming webinars. So we're going to pop up another poll just to get some feedback from you on what you might like us to talk about next time around, and we'll be looking to do a webinar kind of every quarter or more often. So it'd be great if you could answer the poll and give some guidance on what you'd like us to talk about next. Something like, I think, just to round up on some of the things we've talked about today, there's an expectation around being more connected. Everything is becoming more connected in this world. Technology is enabling us to get more devices out into the field. Edge computing is really starting to mature, and that's going to enable further Internet of Things revolutions, and people have to be ready for that. I think if you don't embrace that new technology as it starts to mature, then ultimately you're going to get left behind. I think some of the new technology, and I think Jake raised a great point, we're still probably a good 2 or 3 years from IoT reaching a level of maturity where it becomes the norm, but it is getting there. So I think that ability to be able to interact with devices and connect devices and people and process across the enterprise is going to be key to delivering personalized and highly tailored policies that people are going to want. It's the expectation of the younger generation. And it's not going away. So we have to embrace it. Legacy systems, siloed systems, disjointed processes, they're already hampering the experience without new technology adding to the woes. I mean, I think I've got my own personal examples. I'm sure we've all had suboptimal examples of insurance claims and interactions in the insurance industry. But siloed systems don't necessarily have to be replaced. They just, we can wrap them to bring flexible technology and new innovative solutions to market a lot quicker by wrapping these siloed systems and getting the best out of what they do, but giving you the flexibility to innovate quickly and really give the customers what they want. The last thing we want to do is create islands of data dotted around your organization. So by wrapping it and interacting directly with those siloed systems, keeping the data in the core, but manipulating the data and giving the customer a better experience by wrapping that core with modern technology is without a doubt the way of the future. When we're adding flexibility in, it is possible to do it in small increments. We don't have to bite off a multi-year, multi-million-dollar project to be able to start delivering on some of the innovation and on the efficiency gains and the return on investment. It's vital that the business is free to innovate because they're seeing rapid changes in the marketplace, and that all dovetails in with employee retention and employee satisfaction. If you have managers that can see what's happening in the marketplace and want to respond to it, but they're hampered by the ability of the business to deliver that through their existing systems, then the frustration levels go up, and you get frustrated staff on top of that, and that inevitably is going to affect your customer satisfaction as well. So it's all interlinked together. So in terms of getting started, go for the low-hanging fruit, that delivers the return on an investment early, get some quick wins in to build confidence with the business and demonstrate what the technology can do. And that will help you to deliver rapid ROI, which of course will keep your stakeholders happy. And based on that, you'll end up in part with much higher NPS scores. You'll have reduced costs. You'll get better efficiency, better staff retention, happier customers, the ability to innovate and bring new products to market quicker, which will help to fend off some of the newer digital-first insurers. So from my perspective, look, I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. I'd really like to thank Jake and Gavin for coming along and sharing some of their insights with us. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. So Pete, over to you for the poll.
Wonderful, thank you. Just to let everybody know, I am going to pop Gavin and Jake's LinkedIn in the chat as well, just in case you do want to connect with them. So poll-wise, very, very interesting, really. First release, where to start and what to look out for, which makes sense because we've had several questions around that subject in the chat. So I'm going to touch on those in a second. And the other big one was actually selling the business case, which no one has brought up in the questions, but given everybody's responded, I think I'm going to come to that one at the very end, unless somebody wants to ask the question themselves specifically. So moving into the questions that we've already had, let me just have a quick look here. So we've had a couple of different questions on where to look first. So one person asked, do you look at improving efficiency or should you prioritize fixing things the customers complain about? So you do, I think it's basically a question of, do you drive down your costs or do you drive up your NPS? It's kind of which one trumps which. And then someone else has asked kind of a similar question. Should you pick an area which is less quick win, but the team is more engaged? So those are two very different questions. Dan, do you want to share them out between Gavin and Jake?
Yes, I mean, look, Gav, I'd be interested to get your views on some of that, because you've certainly been in the front line of insurance, especially around things like the NPS versus the efficiency gains. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so look, I think it's a bit of both. So if I was to put my last $100 on, I think it would be probably most of it around the customer experience. So the pain points that the customer, it's almost like the old inverted triangle. Customer right up at the top will translate down to a better outcome at the bottom financially. But you've also got to make sure you've got efficient processes to support the customer experience. So, I think it's dual investment. You've definitely, there is opportunity across most insurance carriers to become more efficient. Like anything in life, you can always become more efficient. So it's harvesting those pain points in the efficiency aspects. So, if a process takes 10 days, get it down to 5. Make sure you get the same outcome, but you're not dealing across 5 systems. So that's going to improve your staff interactions with the core systems and processes. But then from a customer experience, you've got to eliminate the pain points. So the typical pain points that you hear via reporting once a week, back to the call center, etc., is it took 3 days for them to phone me back. Or I didn't even get a call back. So someone's actually gone, made the effort to interact with the insurer, yet because the processes are disjointed, it's got lost or missing. So you've got to fix that up, because you're just not going to have customers, you're going to leak. But you've also got to make things efficient in the background. So it's dual investment from my perspective.
So if I could summarize just for the person who's essentially, you've got to do both, but they should both be looked at through the lens of the customer, not the lens of cost.
Every day of the week.
Okay, so hopefully that's answered the question. If not, please let me know in the chat. And I'm guessing Jake gets the other question.
Indeed.
Now, how much should you be influenced in what you choose to focus on by the team that you would be working with?
Yeah, great question. Going back to kind of tying it back together, several comments today. When you think about the data, I mean, I've yet to meet an insurer that didn't know where the problems were, right? And so if you got that team that's engaged, that's don't take that for granted, because that's an opportunity to go in and empower them with a process and be a platform that brings the IT and the business together. Again, and say again, IT doesn't, purposefully not go help the business because they're competing priorities. And so this gives, the low code gives them guardrails that the business can go, drive that change in very rapidly. And, having that engaged team that wants to come along for the journey is fantastic. And I think the same is true, when we were implementing it, looking at even personas on the developer side. You have those that want to stay with the traditional systems. Those aren't going to go away. Great. Find a persona, and they're out there that are looking for something new and something fresh. And, matching those up, it's just, it's a fantastic way to move forward and drive change.
Yeah. And I mean, I think certainly from my experience, if I had to pick between a smaller project or a project that was a little larger, but where the team was a lot more engaged, I'd go with the engaged team time and time again. I think you end up getting a better outcome, and you'll probably end up getting better ROI with that engaged team, because they've got that passion to get it done, and they know what they want, and that's half the battle.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So hopefully, I mean, very, very clear answer on that one. So hopefully that's answered. I keep wanting to say people's name. Hopefully that's answered the question in the chat for them. Let me know if it hasn't. We did have another question come through. Somebody asked, how do you measure if you're moving as fast as you kind of said there? Jake, Gavin, I can't remember who it was. Sort of 8 weeks. If you're moving that fast, how do you measure the impact to calculate the ROI? If there's just this constant stream of new things coming ahead, essentially that was their question. So I'm not sure who best to throw that one at. Dan, do you want to share that one out?
Yeah, I mean, Jake, you're welcome to take it. I mean, I've got a couple of comments before we start. I mean, I think it's important to make sure that you actually have some metrics on how long your processes are taking currently. For example, if you're looking at improving a process, you need to baseline that process before you make that improvement, and that can be done whether that's you're looking at NPS score, whether you're looking at it from an efficiency lens, whether you're looking at it from a customer experience lens. Baselining those metrics before you make the change, or before you deliver the change, is important, so that you can produce numerical evidence that the change you've made has a positive impact, and then calculate back the benefit you're giving, and then that becomes a really powerful tool to start unlocking other areas of the organization. If you can say, look, in 8 weeks we've improved our NPS score by X, or we've saved a few $100,000 in Y, or we've saved this team 300 person hours a week because we've automated all of these bits and pieces. That they're the kind of metrics that speak. But Jake, be keen to hear your thoughts. Yeah,
absolutely, very, very aligned. Measures of success. How are you going to measure success? What does it look like? All the different areas that are influenced. Are they hard impact? Are they soft impact? And something that's a little bit more difficult to measure, but we were very clear and candid up front, having those hard goals to measure, being able to do it. And the benefit here is that all too often, with traditional waterfall methods, it takes 6 months, a year or more to get something significant delivered, but we're talking weeks. And again, can't emphasize it enough, you're talking weeks, 8 weeks. So when we talk about the measures of success on the front side, we expect NPS to increase by X, straight through process to increase by Y. When we go live at week 8 and we turn it on, we are now measuring those right there, and that is profoundly different, as far as how you can see it. And then if we fall short, which we don't, by the way, we can always tweak it, because what we see, for instance, we had one life customer in Canada, for instance, recently. Wanted to have a 50% increase in straight through process. First iteration was 53%. They continue to tune it. Now they're in the high 80s, and that's over the course of 8 weeks, plus a week, plus a week, plus a week, as far as the tuning part of it. So it's significant. And then they take those colleagues, if you're curious, and they put them back into a experience and sales capacity to help grow the business. So yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on a couple of really interesting points. I mean, I think the agile nature and the rapid delivery means that you're actually seeing things on a regular basis. So the end customer is seeing the system evolve
through playbacks and using that agile approach. It's not like waterfall where you just get to the end of the process, get to the end of the 8 weeks, get to the end of the 3 months, whatever it might take, and there's a system. They're influencing the design of that, and they're coming up with new ideas. And quite often we see that when they see the platform for the first time, it actually sparks new ways of thinking, and they start thinking about that. They look at the different capabilities and go, well, actually, we don't need to do that thing anymore because we've got it all in one place. And they can eradicate steps out of processes where they wouldn't necessarily have been able to before. And then I think the other interesting point, and it's quite topical at the moment as well, around improving existing processes, with the new sort of process mining capabilities that are now built into the platform as well. We can really start to look for opportunities to improve those processes and get some real metrics around how processes that aren't even necessarily modeled within the platform are performing. So we can go out and actively look for opportunities across the organization to optimize the full end-to-end process and get the metrics even better.
That's that prescriptive action I was talking about there. The ability to mine the processes, then take prescriptive action, do something about it in real time. I think that's really a powerful aspect of the platform. Yeah,
it is, and that ability to also look at the interactions between systems, look at the metrics in the data coming from other systems, to provide opportunities for further automation and further process improvement.
Okay, well, I think that's a nice and comprehensive answer. Thanks, Dan. That was actually the last, so hopefully that's answered the question for the person that asked it. Well, please let me know in the chat if you haven't. We don't have any other questions in the chat, but obviously I want to just pick up on that subject we talked about, business case. I almost feel like I've got an inkling of what the answer is going to be. Part of it's going to be, well, it's agile, so the business case can be quite small, and then you kind of, like you touched on, Dan, you build it over time. But I don't want to second guess the answer. I'm not the expert on this show. So Dan, who do you think is best to sort of take this one?
It's probably a good one for Gav around the business case and standing up.
Yeah. So I think that pick your use cases, and this is business driven, not technology driven. As a business owner or a product owner, or claims owner, you've got opportunities and pain points within your business. And you've broken those down into quick wins, short time frames. So I think having that, and then the ability to measure them, as Dan and Jake were saying, that's critical. So you would know that within your operating environments, things are just taking too long over there, or we're just getting bad results. So use the either the negative or the opportunity in the marketplace, and write a simple 5 to 10 page business case. Gone are the days where we write War and Peace. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. We write War and Peace and 50 multiple signature points and processes just to get the business case across the line. I think the world has moved on. There is typically within the organizations now innovation budgets, discretionary spend around this. So you go down those channels. So I don't think it's an arduous process anymore to write a business case to stand up an 8-week cycle of development. The pricing models that we allow for as well are you're not locked into multi-year, multi-million dollar contracts as well. So you can literally engage at a low price point, and within 8 weeks you will know if it's going to work or not, probably even sooner. So your risk profile is significantly reduced. So the short answer is write the business case from within the business unit. Don't push your problem over to the IT side and expect them to give you a solution. Write it out yourself.
Good answer. Jake, do you have anything you want to throw on top of that?
I would just add that it also, A, agree, B, it also helps build confidence from the CFO office, right? You think about all these initiatives, very glowy, that have tried and only partially delivered. Not to pick on RPA, but we see a number of RPA strategies that very lofty goals. However, it was not able to scale to some of the complexity that it was faced with in the business. And from an intelligent automation perspective,
we do deliver on that. So I think that, write that business case yourself. To Gav's point, it doesn't have to be War and Peace. It needs to be crisp, be able to then, show progress back to the CFO office, back to the, working of course with your IT in the business as a business colleague to be able to deliver on that. And then you start small and you iterate from there. Get started though. That's the message I would ask is, and I can't help but comment on the other one earlier about which is it, experience or was it savings? It's both. Like Gav said, you got to get it done. So don't settle.
Don't settle. Like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I can summarize there, really, I like the point. I used to work in IT in big projects and big change, and I think the point you touched on there is that CFOs, they roll their eyes almost when they see the business case on things. It's like, oh look, around $2 million. Interesting. And I think the beauty of your approach that I'm kind of picking up is that if you start small and you deliver on that small promise, the next small promise is more likely to be believed, as is the next. And then all of a sudden you've got this, you're the pet favorite of the CFO. And that's a wonderful place to be. I've seen what that can do for someone's budgets. So I think that's a really, really valuable point, Jake. Thank you for making it. Dan, we are out of questions now. Thank you for everybody, just on my part. Thank you everybody for being in the chat with me. It's lonely if nobody talks to me, but I appreciate everyone engaging. And Dan, do you want to just send us off?
Yeah, so look, thanks everyone for coming onto the webinar. We really appreciate your attendance. Hope you got something from it. Again, thank you to Jake, thank you to Gav, and thanks Pete for doing the chat master role. And we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.